Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. It's probably something that's more common than many of you out there are aware of, and I'm speaking of polycystic kidney disease, also known as PKD. And joining me from the PKD Foundation of Canada is the Executive Director, Jeff Robertson. Jeff, welcome. Great to have you here.
Great to be back.
You've been touring around, right? And spreading the word, raising awareness. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's talk PKD off the top. Sure. Describe to our viewers what it is exactly.
Absolutely. So polycystic kidney disease, or PKD for short, is a group of hereditary genetic diseases that eventually cause the affected organ, predominantly the kidney, to fail over time.
Okay.
Approximately 1 in 400 to 1 in 1,000 people, a global statistic, are affected by PKD.
Do we know what causes it? I mean, it's hereditary, but do we know why it's
a genetic disease. Okay. So for the dominant form, there is a 50% chance of passing that disease on to each offspring. And then the recessive form has a 1 in a quarter chance of being passed on. And that's with each parent having a copy that then manifests in the child. So this goes back to the King of Poland back many, many years ago, was one of the first to be identified with PKD.
Okay. Is it easily diagnosed?
It's a lot better now, thankfully, than it was for generations ago, and my mom included. When she was diagnosed in the 80s, there was very little known about it. A lot of time people would go into end-stage renal failure with just, chronic kidney disease, and then not being labeled per se as PKD, but certainly with imaging, treatment options, clinical care, earlier diagnosis is much more accessible now, and obviously the desired route so that people can get the care and treatment at a much earlier stage.
And so let's talk about that care and treatment. Obviously, that's come a long way in itself. What's available out there today?
So presently, there is only one treatment option available for the dominant form, and that is a drug that was approved by Health Canada in 2015, I should say, Genarc or tolvaptan. And what that drug does is it slows the progression of the cysts from manifesting. So they can be as small as a pin size to as large as a golf ball. And those cysts grow over time, and that's what causes the organ to fail. So this treatment, again, which only is for the dominant form and only patients in a certain category, slows the progression of those cysts growing.
So Jeff, is it inevitable then that it will fail at some point?
About 50 to 60% of those with the dominant form will rely on either dialysis or transplantation, but as I always shared her story as a hopeful one, my grandmother, who passed away last summer, lived to be 98 and never relied on dialysis or transplantation. My mom, who inherited it from my grandmother, has had 2 life-saving liver transplants and will need a kidney. So the hardship with PKD is there's no linear path. Every patient is different.
So it is very individual. That's what I was going to ask you. So are there daily challenges, outside of dialysis, of course, but do you have any effects? How does it affect
It all depends on the patient. Some can live a long, healthy life problem-free. Others, from fatigue to UTIs, kidney stones, pain in the lower flank, which is at the lower back where our kidneys are found, is a common occurrence. It can be a multi-organ disease, right? So my mom, like I said, had it predominantly on her liver, but it can also affect people's hearts. It can affect the brain by way of aneurysms in a small select population. So it's one that has a variety of side effects and daily symptoms that the PKD community does have to live with, and that's why we, as a patient-driven foundation, work tirelessly to improve the quality of life by way of education and support services, so that those who have suffered from years before don't have to endure, the next generation has a higher quality of life.
Right. September 4th was a big day for PKD. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so that is PKD Awareness Day here in Canada and across the world in other countries, recognized by Health Canada. It is our biggest day of the year from an awareness and advocacy standpoint. So we had a record-setting 51 cities and towns across Canada proclaim PKD Awareness Day. We had various flag raisings, proclamations, lightings, the CN Tower, the Calgary Tower, Niagara Falls, all lit up teal and orange for PKD. And again, those 51 local proclamations, aside from Health Canada, it shows the community that they're not alone, that their local leaders and politicians and community stakeholders recognize the importance of leveraging that spotlight for the PKD community. So it's been marvelous to see. You know, I've been at this for a number of years, and every year the exposure and visibility for PKD is growing, and it's the best possible thing to see.
You mentioned the foundation. What sort of resources and services does the foundation offer?
So we have local chapters across Canada. We have one here in Ottawa. When the pandemic hit, we of course had to pivot virtually. So we moved a lot of our educational resources by way of virtual webinars and summits of that nature. But we serve as an opportunity for the local community to get together, to share in that networking. There's nothing more important than peer-to-peer support, talking to someone who's affected by PKD. So our organization serves as the vehicle to get the community together. We have educational events now, again, in person and virtual still, and then also fundraising events that support clinical research here in Canada. We are Canada's only organization solely dedicated to eradicating PKD. So our fundraising efforts allow us to continue the great work that we're doing to fund the clinical research that will allow for future treatment options and hopefully an eventual cure.
Quickly, to find out events that are coming up in people's communities, the website, I imagine, is the best place?
npkd.ca or Fini la NPR en français.
Okay.
There's a wealth of information for those newly diagnosed to the seasoned vets that have been around for a long time.
Excellent. Jeff, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the time. Awesome. We'll be back with more Daytime Ottawa right after this. Don't go anywhere.